Okay, hello and welcome. As people start to join our live video today, we're here in honor of Dr. Wayne Dyer's birthday. If you are watching live or catching the replay, let me know where you're joining from. I'd love to hear your stories as we go. I know so many of you are big Dr. Wayne Dyer fans, and I just wanted us to get together for a chance to honor his birthday and talk a little bit about his life and the impact that he had on so many of us, millions. He reached millions for sure. And have an opportunity to connect with all of you in the community that I love so much and hear, what did Wayne Dyer do for you? Did you have a favorite book? So again, let me know where you're joining from. Let me know, what are you thinking about in terms of Dr. Wayne Dyer or spirituality as we're now into May of 2023. The world keeps changing a lot. And I think that everything that he talked about, everything that he wrote about, everything that he taught us is still so relevant today. Let me know if you can see and hear me. Okay, it looks like we have a few people joining now. Okay, so who am I and what am I doing here? My name is Nadia Delacruz, and just like so many of you, hi Georgia, hi Marcy, hi Keith, thank you so much for joining me today. I started out as a big Wayne Dyer fan, a super fan, like so many of you, and when he died in 2015, I was looking for people to connect with to keep the conversation going. Really, I realized I had so many books and videos and lectures from Wayne, and I wanted to keep going through those. I wanted to keep learning from him and dive back into everything that had made such an impact in my life. I discovered Dr. Wayne Dyer when I was a teenager and watching PBS. And I just started reading everything that he wrote from there on. And, what was your first book with Wayne? Did you have a favorite? Mine was You'll See It When You Believe It, which was his first spiritual book. So he died in 2015, and I was shocked and I was heartbroken. And he was a guiding light for me. He was a father figure for me. My dad was amazing, and so I wasn't looking for a father, but they were the same age. And my dad also liked Wayne Dyer, so we would talk about him sometimes or watch PBS together. But he just reached so many of us. And as I was thinking about coming on today for his birthday, like what do I want to talk about? I want to talk about his sense of humor. What was it that made Wayne? He started out as a professor in New York, and then he wrote Your Erroneous Zones in the 70s, and then he started a career of public speaking and writing books. He wrote over 40 books. He was known as the father of motivation. He had 8 kids of his own. He said, I don't need to be anyone else's father, but he loved it. And you could see when he was on stage, or you could even hear it if you're listening to his lectures, that he really lit up. So it's been about 7.5 years since he passed, and I'm still learning new things from him. I'm enjoying so much connecting with all of you. I started this group back then, and it has just grown and grown, and knowing that there's this place that I can come where you guys are going to get it, and there's things that we can connect about. There's many of you that I've chatted with on the phone or brought on the podcast. I have a podcast called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. And you can get all the details for that on my website, nadiadelacruz.com. I'll put a link for that. Maybe I should do that right now. I'll put a link for my website. The podcast is called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, so you can listen to it on Apple, Spotify, basically anywhere you listen to podcasts. And that's like, it's inspired by the life and teachings of Wayne Dyer, but I'm also bringing on your stories and stories of people who knew Wayne or were impacted by him. Hi, Martha. Marcy said loved his movie. Yeah, The Shift. He was really passionate about The Shift. So before we dive into the conversation about Wayne today, happy birthday, Wayne, I wanted to remind you, okay, so I used to do a monthly Facebook Live. It's been a few months since I've done one, but I've kind of shifted over to Zoom. Not because I don't love all you guys, but because I love being able to see your faces and actually have a conversation. Now, I've set it up. It's called the Spiritual Discussion Group. Our next one is in 2 weeks on May 23rd. That's a Tuesday. We're meeting at 5 p.m. Pacific time. I would love it if you guys could join me, because I feel like that's a way that we can really get to know each other. We can talk about what's going on in your life, just real life from a spiritual perspective. And obviously I'm so influenced by Wayne that I'm always quoting Wayne and pulling things from his books. And I know many of you are too. So we can connect in that way. So if you're interested in doing one of these, but where we can actually talk to each other, come to the Spiritual Discussion Group. May 23rd is our next one. You can register on my website, nadiadelacruz.com. If you haven't heard, the podcast is called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life. The last one was amazing because I had on Dasima, who was the primary caregiver to Ram Dass for the last 15 years of his life on Maui. Many of you may know Wayne Dyer helped Ram Dass get settled on Maui, and they were really good friends, so we got to talk about the friendship between the two of them. So I love that episode, and I think that you guys will too. But I do have some other things like Wayne Dyer's origin story and all that stuff. You can see featured episodes and whatnot on the website, or just message me if you have questions. I love talking to you guys, honestly. I'm available. You can talk to me. And the Spiritual Discussion Group, there is a small fee associated with that. It's $9 a month if you're a subscriber, or $11 for a drop-in. But look, I know times are tough. Inflation is real, y'all. So if that's a problem, but you want to be there, please just message me. Like, I'm not going to turn anybody away for lack of funds. I want you guys to be there with me, if that's something that's in your heart, if that resonates with you. Okay, so Dr. Wayne Walter Dyer, Wayne W. Dyer, was born in Detroit on May 10th, 1940. That was 83 years ago. And I wish that he was here talking to you guys today instead of me. Not that I don't want to be here talking to you, but I wish that he was still here. What I wouldn't give for another Wayne Dyer lecture or a fresh new book. But I think he would tell us that he put everything that we need in all those books. He wrote over 40 books. He talked about it and talked about it. He gave us so many tools. They're still so relevant, So he's still with us in that way. Not only does he live on in our hearts, but he left a whole multimedia library for us. And I think that maybe, he used to say nobody dies before it's their time. That gives me a certain sense of peace about when he left. He died on the anniversary of the most significant day of his life, which was the day he forgave his father, and his whole life changed. And, 2 weeks later, he made the manuscript for Your Erroneous Zones, and his whole life changed. So that doesn't sound like a coincidence to me. I would have loved for him to stick around another decade or two, Wayne. But he did his life's work, and I'm so grateful. Do you have a favorite teaching from Wayne? I feel like my biggest takeaway was that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, and that what is more important to learn about than the truth of your own being, who you really are, that you are a soul that's here for a temporary human experience, that the essence of you is birthless and deathless, and it continues. And I know he talked about, feeling the energy, the spirit messages from ancestors, from Lao Tzu, from people who had passed on, that we can still connect to them. They're all They're all around us all the time. I do believe in angels, guides, and ancestors that are here supporting us. And I think that we're never going to understand it all in this form, but we're here to experience it. And Wayne got really good at the human experience. He got really good at teaching us how to not feel victimized, how to maintain that sense of inspiration, how to be self-directed and self-guided. And he gave us so many examples and so many tools that go back to ancient wisdom. So anytime you're feeling burned out or uninspired, and it happens to all of us, there's an ebb and flow. My favorite thing to do is to go back to Wayne's lectures, listening to him in particular, and I've downloaded some of his Audible books. And it was so amazing to realize that I'd listened to most of the lectures, I hadn't listened to most of the audio books, that years after this man is gone, it's like he's speaking to me from the beyond. I can see it on my tablet. It's going down the words on the book, and he's reading it right to me with his voice. And it was a new experience. It was something I hadn't had while he was here. But I mean, he put a lot of work into this, and it still gets me back into alignment. And I really believe all the answers that you need come from within. I really believe that you are so much more powerful and have so much more influence over your experience of life than anybody's probably ever told you. And that's kind of a lot of responsibility. That's a big thing to take on, that taking radical responsibility for your life and for your own happiness. But then that empowers you and it gives you choices. And Wayne did that for me, and he still does. Becky says hi from Ohio. Keith says, I'm so far away from the spirit. Do you meditate, Keith? Wayne used to talk about that as making conscious contact with God, that if prayer is you talking to God, then meditation is listening. And that we put ourselves into this calm, receptive space. And sometimes we try to think our way out of all our problems, and we really worship the intellect. But there's so much wisdom in the heart, and there's so much wisdom in your soul. And I don't think your soul speaks to you so much through your brain. I think your soul speaks to you through your body and through your emotions. So whatever you can do to get more connected to your body and paying attention to how you feel, the more you could reconnect to that feeling of inspiration, the more that you can listen and hear and understand the guidance that's always coming to you. We're born with this internal guidance system. Tracy says, morning from my hospital bed in Sydney, Australia. Blessings to you, Tracy, whatever you're going through. I see you surrounded by angels in the healing golden light. Wayne would want you to repeat this. I am healed. I am healed. I am in perfect health. And let yourself feel that. Blessings to you. Mary Jo says you knew about him as a child and he wrote about you and mentioned you during his TV talk several times. Mary, I'm not familiar. I have so many questions. Why don't you message me? If you can message me, personal message, or message me on my website, nadiadelacruz.com. Love to hear more. Let's see. Ethna says, I talk to Wayne Dyer a lot. I feel like he has really helped me. You know, Wayne so encouraged that. So, like, I don't feel embarrassed at all about, like, you know, carrying a book around with me or putting affirmations up around my house or looking at Wayne and going, you know, what did you mean when you wrote this? Because he used to do stuff like that. Yeah. But this is the kind of thing that we can talk about in the spiritual discussion group too. I don't really want to set that up as like a lecture, you know? I do plenty of those. But I want to set it up as a space where we can just have a dialogue and we can talk about what's going on in your life and talk about spiritual perspective for dealing whatever was going on, or celebrating whatever's going on, or just looking at things differently, because we're all one. We're all in this together. And yeah, it's a lot harder when it's just comments. But don't stop commenting. I love hearing from you. This is what we got today. So Wayne was born on May 10th, 1940 in Detroit. He was the youngest of 3 boys. Now, his father, I believe, was an alcoholic and abusive, and he abandoned the family when Wayne was just a baby. His mother didn't have the funds to support 3 little kids, so he ended up in an orphanage and through a series of foster homes before his mom reunited the family years later. And, you know, he wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and he used his own life as an example so many times about what's possible. That's not the book. You can read more about his book or his life in, let me grab it. Hold on. This one. I Can See Clearly Now. It's not exactly a memoir. You call it like a series of miraculous events or synchronicities in his life that showed that, you know, there was a plan for him. There was a path. One thing led to another. And he has so many great stories from his life in this book. I highly recommend it. He was introduced to Thoreau and Emerson in high school, which he loved throughout his life. He had pictures of them in his writing space. He was in the Navy, which was an interesting choice because he didn't really like being told what to do. But he did actually practice some of his writing while he was in the Navy, and he was teaching subjects to people, so this was already in him. His uncle was a teacher, Bill Volek, and had inspired him. So he said, you know, when I come out of the Navy, I'm going to go to school to be a teacher. And he got into Wayne State University. They took a chance on him because his transcript was not good. He was a scurvy elephant. And he was a psychology major, but he was studying humanistic psychology, which is just this really positive subset of the psychology, which isn't studying all the pathologies and everything that can go wrong, but it's talking about human potential, you know, from teachers like Abraham Maslow. And he got a Doctor of Education degree in counseling. He worked as a high school guidance counselor. He trained as a Jungian analyst under the methods of Carl Jung. And then he became a professor of counseling psychology at St. John's University in New York, which was a good challenge for him. While he was there, he did do, you know, some academic writing. He published journals and co-wrote some textbooks, lectured on positive thinking and motivational speaking, and I think he was really engaging when he spoke, so people would want to come to his lectures, and he ended up starting to do lectures open to the public and realized that he could get paid for this. He always wanted to write a book for a public audience. Like all these things he's learning in college, they were so academic and they weren't accessible to everybody. And especially because he was learning about what was possible for people, he wanted the rest of us to know and stop feeling victimized by our lives and powerless. He wanted to give us our power back. He wanted to wake us up and say, this is who you really are, and this is what's possible for you. And the first couple books that he wrote were really from a psychology standpoint. And it wasn't until the late 80s, early 90s, he started writing about spirituality. And there's this shift, but he never left that psychology foundation. He was always helping us learn how to think and what to think and how to shift ourselves to connect to the power of our own lives and take charge of our own lives. And I think that's one of the reasons he reached so many people, is there was this crossover between psychology and spirituality, and he made some of those woo-woo subjects a lot easier to approach, to start learning about, to feel safe with, and not think that it's just a bunch of crazy hobbledegook, right? Like he brought it to us in such a sensible manner. He'd break it down into steps and things like that. But he was taking like ancient books that are hard for most of us to decipher and putting it into common sense language. And even in the beginning, his publishers were giving him pushback. They're like, no, we want more citations. We want this to sound more academic, like more smart, And he wanted it to just be conversational, that we can all understand it. And that made him fun to read. It made him fun to listen to. Obviously, his humor and his charisma. He was kind of bigger than life. And so it's almost shocking that he died, because he was this bigger than life, amazing. He was the keynote speaker for Hay House for many years. He was Wayne Dyer. But we're all here for a temporary human experience. And while we're here, I think it's so valuable to have these practices and these books and these teachings and these understandings that we can marinate in to have the most enjoyable time here on earth, and to learn from everything we go through. Learn to trust ourselves. It can take a long time to learn to trust yourself if you weren't taught that as a child. And how many of us were? He published Erroneous Zones in 1976, which was written again after what he described as the most significant day of his life, the day he forgave his father at his graveside. And he died on the anniversary of that same date. I think that just shows us how significant it was to him. So he walked away from his teaching job. He walked away from St. John's, and he took a big chance. He didn't just write a book and then that was it. He wrote a book. They published it. It wasn't selling very well. The books got remaindered. They weren't going to print anymore, selling them for half off. Wayne believed in this book so much, he bought up the rest of his books and drove them around the country, talking to anybody who would listen to him, get on any radio shows. I was just hearing him talk. Yesterday I was listening to the Hay House app, and there's a recording of I Am Light, which was his last talk in Australia just before he died. And he was talking about how there were all these amazing breaks that happened to him along the way, these synchronicities that if it didn't happen, he would have never seen the successes. He wouldn't have been on the Tonight Show. He wouldn't be so well known maybe, but it's like there was something bigger moving the pieces around. So he believed in it and he took action, but he wasn't doing it alone. He couldn't have been doing it alone because all of these things were happening along the way to connect him with the next step and getting that message out there. And I think his heart was really pure about wanting this to reach people. And so it did. It did. He had a shift from psychology to spirituality publicly in the early 1990s, but I'm pretty sure it happened a little earlier than that. He used to give talks at Unity churches too, and he liked that they could cover so many different subjects, and he got more interested, so he started studying spirituality and started teaching it to us. And you can see this transformation as he moves later into life, that he was just less ego, more calmer, more peaceful, more compassionate. Just a softness about him, talking about love is at the heart of everything. He had that shirt, love period, because that's life. That's what's at the heart of everything. God is love, and God is in you, and your essence is love. Your essence is love. And he used to talk about connecting to God, that we're always connected, but it's how corroded is that link. So if you can just clean up that link, then it's like you have this flow of love, of potential, of possibility, of inspiration, of guidance, of, the power to transform your life is always at your fingertips. You just have to slow down, quiet down, and open to it and let it in. What is it that made Wayne Wayne? I mean, one can only guess. But he was self-driven from a young age, maybe starting in the orphanage. He was a nonconformist. He was willing to do things differently. He was self-reliant, outspoken. He was an avid reader. He loved to read. He had been writing stories and essays since he was a boy. He always wanted to help others. He was willing to go against the grain, put everything on the line and go after his vision. That takes so much courage, and to take the path less traveled. He has a talk that's called It's Never Crowded on the Extra Mile. I think he has a book of the same name. So he had a lot of influences along the way. I talk about that in the Wayne Dyer origin story episode on the Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life podcast. I recorded that one a couple of years ago, but I put a lot of detail into that about, some of his early thought influences, really, like, Emerson and Thoreau, Bishop Fulton Sheen, Transcendentalism, Abraham Maslow. He talked about self-actualizing. Carl Jung, synchronicity. Albert Ellis was actually a big influence to his first book, who talked about rational emotive therapy. There's a lot of foundation in that for what he was teaching in Your Erroneous Zones. I know that Ram Dass was one of his spiritual influences. Carlos Castaneda, he was a student of A Course in Miracles. Louise Hay, obviously they became friends. She's the founder of Hay House, a publishing company for spiritual topics. She actually passed away on the same day as Wayne, but it was it 2 or 3 years later? He was inspired by St. Francis of Assisi, Neville from the I Am Discourses, and so many others, And I think the biggest message from Dr. Wayne Dyer is that if it's possible for one, it's possible for all of us. And he wanted you to know that you are a spiritual being, that you are connected to everything, that you are never alone, and that if you shift the way you look at something, you shift the way you think, your whole life can transform like that in an instant. Your whole life can transform. And as long as you sit there going, it's too hard, it's too late, I'm too young, I'm too old, I don't have enough money, I'm not good at that. These are self-defeating and self-fulfilling prophecies. Don't tear yourself down. Your imagination is your greatest asset. If you can imagine it, that is the beginning of all creation. You are a divine creative being who is always co-creating with every thought that you have. We have 60,000 thoughts every day. The problem is we have the same 60,000 thoughts every single day. But you can make a shift. You can make a shift. And any practices that help you quiet down, feel more connected to your body, connect to the breath. Wayne has some guided meditations if you'd like to try them. I do recommend the awe meditation from his Meditations for Manifesting. But there's so many ways of doing that, even listening to music or being out in nature. But you have to make space to connect with your higher self. Everything that you need comes from within. This is your doorway. If you're chasing after these ego-based things that say, I am what I have, I am what I do, I am what other people think about me, then when you don't have, you aren't. Don't make your self-image and your self-worth, how you see yourself, dependent on anything external to you. That's also not where the answers are. Look at all the people who have chased after wealth and fame. Did they have wonderful, happy, blissful, easy lives? No. We can see now more than ever how much trauma has been involved in these people's lives that we've worshipped over the years. Our celebrities that we worship, are they better off? Are they happier? Well, they are if they have meaningful relationships, if they have some sort of connection to something bigger than themselves, if they have a connection to the natural world around them and they respect their bodies. They can have amazing lives, but that has nothing to do with the fame and the wealth and the accolades and the likes and the number of followers and all of that. Your happiness comes from within. And if you can't be happy now, right now, the way things are in your life, exactly, all your messy, imperfect life, if you can't be happy now, you'll never be happy because it's not out there. Happiness is something you bring to life. My good friend Bobby Branch, who is friends with Wayne, beautiful soul, she wrote a song based on that message from Wayne Dyer. Happiness is something that you bring to life. He used to talk about the orange. When you squeeze an orange, what comes out? Orange juice. Well, why is that? Because that's what's inside. So what happened when somebody squeezes you? When something difficult happens, when something rubs you the wrong way, then whatever is inside of you comes out. Our relationship to life is our relationship with ourselves. We just project it onto everything else. So you got to get right in here. This is where change happens. I believe in you. You are a courageous spiritual being that took birth on earth during this very interesting but slightly tumultuous time where it's easy to feel ungrounded and disconnected. But we are all one and we are all connected. And there is love here for you. Wayne may not be here in physical form, neither is Ram Dass, but they're here in spirit. They're here in spirit, and their teachings are here, and they can help you. They can help you if you want to tune in, if you want to connect. Thank you for joining me today in honor of Dr. Wayne Dyer's what would have been 83rd birthday. He made it to 75. Still, well done, Wayne. Beautiful, amazing life. You built so much for us. You have a beautiful family, and we love you, Wayne, and we're grateful. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this community where we can connect, and I hope to see some of you at our next spiritual discussion group, Tuesday, May 23rd. You can get all the details for everything, podcast, events, NadiaDelacruz.com. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for watching the replay. Please share where you're joining from if you have a favorite memory or a quote or a book from Wayne. What impact did he have on you? I'd love to hear it. Love to you all. Namaste.